Pokémon is a game with a lot of measurable attributes of each individual Pokémon, like being a certain type, having a certain base stat, and having access to a certain move or ability. Because of this, we like to group certain Pokémon together due to their shared attributes, creating an archetype. There are offensive Pokémon, defensive Pokémon, support Pokémon, water types, dragon types, Pokémon with good abilities, Pokémon with bad abilities, and so on. You can pretty much make an infinite number of archetypes, but one thing will always be true. Not all archetypes are created equal, and some are just straight up worse than others. However, there's almost always an exception of a good Pokémon and a bad archetype, which is what we will be discussing in this video. Specifically, I'm going to be taking a look at some of the worst archetypes I outlined in my The Worst Designed Competitive Pokémon video, plus some new ones, and we'll be discussing the best or really only good Pokémon that falls victim to being part of that bad archetype, discussing how it succeeds despite that archetype's typical shortcomings. If you haven't watched that video, no worries, I'll be explaining every archetype for each entry. First, we have Torkoal being the best slow mixed attacker. The slow mixed attacker archetype, aka the Hoenn special, is one of the worst ways that a Pokemon's base stats can be distributed. This is because it almost always results in low bulk and low speed, with those stat points being wasted in both attacking stats, something you generally don't need. This means that the Pokemon can't outspeed its opponents to get their attacks off since it has low speed, and it can't take hits very well to get its attacks off since it has low defenses. Torkoal though works for a few reasons. First, its attack and special attack aren't that high, so it actually has good bulk. Well, good is maybe a stretch because physical defense is what carries its bulk, but 70 in HP and special defense is absolutely workable. Its speed is also so low that it will almost always be the first thing to move in Trick Room, with there only being 4 fully evolved Pokemon with a lower speed stat than Torkoal. What really does it though is Torkoal's access to a certain ability and move. Starting in Gen 7, Torkoal gets access to the ability Drought, which sets Harsh Sunlight on switch-in for 5 turns. Sunsetting is invaluable to certain teams due to all the effects it provides, like its boost to fire moves, activation of certain abilities, and activation of certain moves. Torkoal also gets the move Eruption, which is one of the best spread moves in the game, being 150 base power, 100% accurate if the user is at full HP. So even coming off of a Pokemon with 85 base special attack, being a 150 base power sun boosted stab move makes Eruption hit very hard. For more consistent damage, Torkoal has plenty of fire moves to choose from, like Heat Wave, Flamethrower, Fire Blast, and Overheat, which is what makes its offense actually good. Next, we have Calyrex-Ice being the best slow defensive ice type. The slow defensive ice type has some of the worst synergy of any Pokemon archetype. Ice's inherent properties are high offense, low defense, so having stats that are high defense, low offense is not ideal. You can't take advantage of your good offensive typing because of your stats, and you can't take advantage of your good defensive stats because of your typing. Calyrex-Ice though has high offense and high defense. They are so high that its poor defensive typing doesn't really matter. The only stat that it lacks is speed, but due to Glastrier combining with Calyrex, a psychic type, Calyrex-Ice can learn Trick Room. The fusing process also gives Calyrex a busted signature move, and these two things are really what sets Calyrex-Ice apart from plain old Glastrier. Honestly, if Glastrier got Glacial Lance in Trick Room, it would be just as good, if not better than Calyrex-Ice, because it doesn't take up a restricted slot in restricted formats, it has lower speed to underspeed more things in Trick Room, and has 1 fewer weakness. Glastrier doesn't get those moves though, so back to Calyrex-Ice. Calyrex-Ice may have the best defensive stats in the entire game, second to maybe Giratina. Its typing is also not even that bad defensively, as it doesn't have any 4x weaknesses. This means that very few Pokemon or pairs of Pokemon in doubles can consistently knock it out before it gets Trick Room off. Once it does that, it can fire off its no drawback 120 base power spread ice move, and if it gets a knockout, it gets a +1 attack boost to snowball its offense even more. It gets plenty of coverage moves too, with it having options to hit every type for super effective that resists ice. Close combat for steel and ice, high horsepower for steel and fire, and seed bomb for water. Next, we have Palafin being the best high base stat Pokemon with a drawback ability. The high stat drawback ability archetype is bad because the drawbacks on the abilities are usually way too high. Most abilities help a Pokemon in some way, even if that use doesn't come up in every battle, so at worst, they are useless. For the most part, drawback abilities have negative effects and are at best useless, because Game Freak thought that these Pokemon would be too strong otherwise. With Palafin though, its drawback is very manageable. Palafin starts out in its Zero form with these stats. They are not great, good HP and speed, but none of its other stats stand out as particularly good. When it switches out and returns back to battle, its Zero to Hero ability will then activate, which bumps up its base attack, defense, special attack, and special defense, making its base stat total on par with legendary Pokemon. Palafin also gets the new move Flip Turn, a stab pivoting move, which is perfect for it since it needs to switch out to get its form change off. You can always just hard swap if you don't want to use Flip Turn, which is something that you will generally be doing anyway in a battle. Once the form change has occurred, Palafin will stay in that form for the rest of the battle with no drawbacks on its ability or stats, so no having its stats for 5 turns, no being forced to not move every other turn, or anything like that. In reality, the ability's drawback is that it doesn't do anything after you've transformed. Palafin also has the very strong signature move Jet Punch, a 60 base power priority move, which is just insane power for a stab priority move. Once you think of Palafin as a Pokemon that can only get stronger, you'll start to realize how much better it is than all the other high base stat Pokemon with drawback abilities, since all of them can get weaker. Unless nullified or overridden, Slacking's Truant will always make it loaf around every other turn. Regigigas' slow start counter can reset if you switch. Archeops gets weaker at half or less HP. And Wishiwachi can change back to its solo form, while Palafin cannot change back to its Zero form during battle. Next, we have Iron Hands being the best physical attacking electric type. Electric has been cursed since pretty much day one in having little to no good physical moves that are not signature moves. Electric was originally a special type, so in Gen 4, Spark and Thunder Punch were made to be physical, with the introduction of Thunder Fang as well. Thunder Punch is definitely the best out of the three, but physical attacking electric types would really prefer more than just 75 base power for their main attacking move. Gen 5 introduced Wild Charge, a move with a higher 90 base power, but it has no paralysis chance and deals recoil damage. When looking at Wild Charge compared to Thunderbolt, a special move we've had since Gen 1, there's absolutely no reason for Wild Charge to be this bad. In Gen 9, we got Supercell Slam, which is an electro-type equivalent of Jump Kick. Not exactly the most consistent move, especially since ground types are immune to electric. Again, this move has no right being this bad with how consistent Thunderbolt is. This has caused mons like Electivire, Electros, Iron Thorns, Luxray, and Tapu Koko to really struggle with their physical stab, or not even use physical moves at all. What makes Iron Hands so good is that it's not just an electric type, it's a fighting type too, which is the best physical type in the game. Iron Hands has plenty of physical fighting moves like Low Kick, Low Sweep, Brick Break, Drain Punch, Body Press, Close Combat, and Focus Punch all being viable options. Yeah, it has to use Thunder Punch, Wild Charge, or Supercell Slam for physical electric stab, but with how good its stats are with super high HP and attack, high defense, with low special defense that could be easily patched up with an Assault Vest, Iron Hands is by far the best physical attacking electric type. In VGC, it has just been getting better and better since it has Fake Out and coverage options like Heavy Slam to hit Flutter Mane, and it's now actually able to take advantage of its ability with Miraidon being legal in Reg G and Reg I. With Cork Drive boosting its attack and Electric Terrain boosting its electric moves, those mid-physical electric moves will be hitting very hard. Next, we have Chien-Pao being the best Glass Cannon. Now when I say Glass Cannon as a bad archetype, I mean specifically in VGC. In singles, Glass Cannons are totally fine. In VGC though, several issues occur and I actually made a whole video on this. To sum it up though, Glass Cannons in VGC have trouble because they have low defenses and too many weaknesses, so they don't tend to last for very long in the fast-paced nature of double battles. They typically only offer single target damage, which is something that they can get away with when there's only one target in singles, but doesn't get them very far in doubles. Their lack of bulk and lack of supporting moves make them unable to fill the role of a supporting mon, and the duplicate item clause makes them a Choice Scarf and Focus Sash hog on a team. In order for a glass cannon to really be effective in VGC, it needs to have some kind of X factor to really make itself useful. Chien-Pao has that in its signature ability, Sword of Ruin. Sword of Ruin passively lowers the defense of all surrounding Pokemon, which only affects one opponent in singles, but it affects both opponents in doubles, at the cost of also affecting your ally. This means that just by being on the field, Chien-Pao boosts its own offense and its allies' offense, which is really what sets it apart from other glass cannons. Chien-Pao is also super strong on its own, being incredibly fast, a lucky member of the 135 club in Gen 9, with a high 120 attack stat. Its typing is built to be offensive too, with the combination of Dark and Ice being able to hit every monotype for at least neutral damage. It has solid stab with Crunch, Throat Chop, Ice Spinner, and Icicle Crash, priority stab with Ice Shard and Sucker Punch, and coverage with Sacred Sword, Acrobatics, and Psychic Fangs. Chien-Pao is one of the best users of the Stellar Terra type, as that boosts its offense with the different type moves it uses. With the Focus Sash and Protect, that's all Chien-Pao needs to stay alive long enough to boost its allies' damage output. Duos like Chien-Pao Dragonite and Chien-Pao Urshifu are especially strong, allowing Chien-Pao to stay relevant in every Scarlet and Violet VGC regulation since its introduction in Reg C. Lastly, we have Garganacl being the best slow defensive rock type. Slow defensive rock types are bad for the exact same reason that slow defensive ice types are bad. The type is built to be offensive, but the Mon's stats are built to be defensive. Rock has Ice's problems just to a lesser extent because it has 4 resistances as opposed to Ice's 1, but you could also argue that it's worse since it has 5 weaknesses as opposed to Ice's 4. Overall though, Ice is probably still the worst defensive type in the game. Rock makes for especially bad dual typings, with the majority of Rock dual typings having at least one 4x weakness. Rock Ground is 4x weak to Water and Grass, Rock Ice is 4x weak to Fighting and Steel, Rock Steel is 4x weak to Fighting and Ground, and so on. Garganacl, on the other hand, is a mono rock type, so even though it has 5 weaknesses, it at least doesn't have any 4x weaknesses. It also has great defensive stats, some of the best of any non-legendary in the game, but what really sets it apart is its signature ability and signature move. Purifying Salt is genuinely an absurd ability. It has 2 effects, making the user immune to status conditions and having the damage taken from ghost type attacks, essentially giving it a ghost resistance. The only drawback is that unlike abilities that provide individual status condition immunities like Insomnia, Purifying Salt does not heal status conditions if it was bypassed or nullified, unlike Insomnia and other individual status condition immune abilities that would heal those conditions. Garganacl also cannot use Rest to restore its HP, but it doesn't need to since it gets Recover. Its signature move is also really good, Salt Cure. This move deals 40 base power rock damage and then damages the target by 1/8 of their max HP every turn until they switch out, with the effect that water and steel types lose 1/4 of their max HP. Combined with Stealth Rock for hazard setting, Iron Defense and Curse for setting up, Wide Guard for support in doubles, Block for trapping opponents, a pretty decent amount of good attacking moves if you want to go on offense, and Terra to get around those pesky weaknesses, Garganacl is a nuisance of a defensive mon. And those are, in my opinion, the best Pokemon of the worst archetypes. Did I miss any bad archetypes, or do you feel that one that I mentioned isn't the best of that archetype? Let me know. Anyway, if you want to support me and my channel, the best way to do so is just by leaving a nice comment. I do read all comments and will try my best to respond to as many as I can. You can also click the join button and become a member, and I made the cost as low as possible at 99 cents USD. Members get a badge next to their name and 4-day early video release access. Keep in mind that these videos will be releasing on my normal schedule for non-members, so please don't feel obligated at all to join unless you really want to support me and you are financially capable of doing so. Huge thanks to all my members. I really appreciate your continued support for the channel. Likes are also one of the ways that YouTube determines if a video should be passed around to more people, so if you feel that this video deserves to be, I would appreciate it. Thanks for watching.